Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be wrapping up all of the books that I read in the month of April. So April, it was a little bit of a slower reading month for me. I finished 5 books in total, so my worst reading month of the year, but I have enjoyed everything that I read despite it being a little bit slower, and some of the books were quite chunky, so I went for quantity of pages over quantity of books. So I'll just run through some statistics and then I'll get into things and intersperse some of the life events that went along with it, because you seem to like that interspersion in my March wrap up. So 5 books in total, coming to a grand total of 2,709 pages. I am midway through a 6th book as well. There is a chance, a slim chance, but a chance I could finish it before the end of the month, because it is the 29th of April as of right now. So I do have 1.5 days left, but I have plans tomorrow, and I don't feel like it's quite going to be within my reach, but there is still a potential chance that that one will get finished, but I expect it will be at the very beginning of May. 3 of the books were fantasy. 1 was a paranormal fantasy romance type book, 1 was a contemporary romance, 3 of the books were adult, 2 were YA, and then of my star ratings, 1 was 5-star, 2 were 4-star, and 2 were 3.5 stars. I had these grand plans in my April TBR. I was going to finish all these series. I was going to be like, oh yeah, we're going to finish this series, so many series that I can finish, month of finishing series. I didn't finish any series in April. No, I did not finish any series, but I did continue in 2. The one that I'm reading right now would also continue a 3rd series, so I've done some continuing. I've made some progress. I didn't start any either, so I've not made the situation worse. I just didn't succeed in finishing any. But maybe I will just postpone all of that success into May, maybe. I have decided that I'm not going to continue on with the Daughters of Izdihar duology. I have unhauled that book. I've given it to a friend. I feel as though it's not really stuck with me. I read it in January, so that's going to come off my series list, which is going to put my on the go series at 29. So let's just dive on in to the books. So yeah, the first book and the last book that I finished in April were Chain of Gold and then Chain of Iron. So the first and second book in the Last Hours series by Cassandra Clare. This is part of the Shadowhunter world. If you are not aware, Cassandra Clare has created a massive universe called the Shadowhunters, where there are a variety of magical creatures, but you're mostly following these Shadowhunters, which are descendants from angels who fight demons. They are very romance drama heavy, that a lot of the focus of these books is on the tension and the angst between the romantic pairings, and maybe less so on the actual fantasy plotline. I find these very enjoyable to read, very addictive to read, and just a very fun time to read these books. I have been reading the miniseries for 10ish years now, so I feel like it would be a massive undertaking if you have not read any Cassandra Clare to date. But for me, I only had this series that I was not up to date on. It wasn't so overwhelming, but there are. Before this, I would say you have to read The Infernal Devices, which is a trilogy set in the 1800s. Then this trilogy follows the children of that trilogy in the sort of early 1900s. There is also 2 other series which are set in modern day. So in total, this was the 14th book in all those series. There are also novellas and other books that I haven't read that are not core to the series, but so many books. But anyway, these are the 2 that I read. Didn't quite get to the 3rd one, which is Chain of Thorns, and that has recently come out, and that would wrap up the series, so not quite finished this off yet, but I feel like it's good progress because I reread this one. I read this one back in 2020, and then I continued and read this one, which I had actually pre-ordered in 2021 and never read it, so I felt quite accomplished finishing this off. I think I really liked my reread of this. I found it really fun to get back into the world with these characters, and I felt like I connected to them more maybe the second time around. I think the first time I read it was the week everything was locking down during COVID, and I think it was the perfect book to pick up then because it was a distraction from that. But I'd also felt like it had been a very long time since I'd read the original trilogy, and then I didn't reread the original trilogy, but I did sort of give myself a little refresh of it, so I could remember who those characters were and which pairings were all together. So I felt like going into this, I had a better groundwork for it of remembering who was who. So I managed to connect, I think, more to the characters this time around. I still think these are sort of probably 4-star books for me now. Maybe if I was reading them 10 years ago, if these were out 10 years ago, then these probably would have been 5-star books for me. But as of right now, I feel as though they have to be spaced out a little bit, that there is a lot of angst in here. Like, there is a lot of angst between these characters, and it can be frustrating at times to read when you're just like, can these people just communicate? Like, why do we have to get to this level of angst? Like, why can't these people just be happy? Because the same thing happens in here. There's the same thing where you've got the angst, and especially the ending, you're just like, really? All of these circumstances come together at this point to get to where the characters are not going to be together. Like, Cassandra Clare comes up with ways consistently for our characters not to be together, for them constantly to be on other sides of the world, on other sides of that mentally, like, not on the same path. She really much, she puts the characters through things, and I don't know how she keeps coming up with new ways to keep characters apart. I enjoyed the progression that we got in here. Oh, hello, noisy beepy thing. I enjoyed the progression that we got in here. I am definitely invested in seeing what is going to happen with our characters. It does make me really realise that I'm here for the characters and not so much for the plot. I don't really mind what's going to go on with the plot, because I know we're going to get to a happy ever after. I know we're going to get there with the characters as well, but I'm reading these more for the, like, angsty relationship than I am for them fighting demons. But definitely very, very enjoyable. And I would say, if you're after probably like an easy read or a fun read, then these are definitely fun reads that don't require tons and tons of brain power. The contemporary romance, I realise I'm quite romance-y heavy this month. It is a little bit romance heavy. I thought going into April that I was going to be in like an epic fantasy mood, and there is an epic fantasy in here, but maybe I wasn't as epic fantasy heavy as I anticipated that I was going to be. I read 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This is a contemporary romance following two main characters that are both authors. They knew each other for 7 days in June when they were teenagers, and neither of them were in a very healthy place in their lives in terms of abuse of different drugs or alcohol or relationships with other people. The circumstance they were in was unhealthy, and since that week they haven't had any contact. And then in modern day, 15 years later, they reconnect, and it is them seeing where their relationship is at now, and seeing how their lives have changed, seeing where they are now, and seeing if they're in a healthier, better place to be together. So sort of like a second chance romance. I definitely was rooting for our characters. I was engaged with them. I enjoyed the different topics that were explored throughout this. So our main character experienced severe migraines. They are a chronic illness for her that takes over a large chunk of her day, and that she is unable to function without any form of like medication to help her with these migraines. I liked our main character's relationship with her daughter as well, and their dynamic, and also the friendship group, and having like author and literary circles as like the backdrop for this. I will say there was like something, and I was waiting for it to be revealed because I thought it was really obvious, but then it never got revealed at the end. So now I'm questioning if I misread something in here. If someone's read this, then can you message me and can we talk? Because I feel like there was something in here that was just never went anywhere, and I am sure it should have been like a plot twist, but maybe there was some miscommunication between me and the book. I found this very addictive to read, that I think I read the first 150 or so pages in one go, and then I read the second half in pretty much in one go as well, that I was engaged with reading it. This book I read, so we had a conference in Italy with work, so I was in Italy for a good few days, and I took this book with me, and I think this was a very good book to take with me, and I think going forward I'm going to plan to take a romance book with me away when I travel for work instead of a fantasy book, because I didn't have that disconnect getting back into it, that I very easily got back into this book after the conference, because I didn't read when I was there. Like, I read those 150 pages. I had a 3-hour delay on a flight. I had these visions that I was going to go over to Italy, I was going to land at 8 p.m. and I was going to go out for dinner and have a lovely, lovely pizza. No, I got a 3-hour delay, so I landed at 11 p.m. and I had to have a sad airport dinner. But I did manage to read 150 pages of the book, so that there was that not real win, but I did do a lot of reading. And then I was like, oh my God, I've only got this one book with me. What happens if I finish this book and I don't have another book to last me like during the rest of the trip? No. Those were the only pages that I read during that whole trip. I didn't even read on the way home because I was so tired. This was the right book, I would say, to take with me on that trip, and I did enjoy this one. Vish, Sam and I continued in our buddy read of the Side Changing series, so we read Mind to Possess, which is book 4. I don't feel like this one has actually stuck with me that much since reading this. So I read this towards the beginning of the month. And I enjoyed it at the time. Like, I think this was like a 3.5, 3.75 star book. And despite the title, it was a lot less possessive than I expected it to be. I was really nervous going into this one. I was like, oh no, it's going to be such an alpha hole male love interest. Like, I'm not going to enjoy this. But actually, it wasn't as bad as I anticipated. I did like our main characters. So like they had met as kids and then they were coming back into contact, and I did enjoy that dynamic. And I also enjoyed sort of the case of trying to figure out the sort of case in here. I feel like each book there is some sort of like murder or kidnapping investigation that is trying to be solved. I am enjoying like how the world is getting bigger and bigger as each book goes on, as we dive into the different races, the dynamics between them, and I feel like my nose is getting very blocked all of a sudden. Yeah, and continuing to enjoy this series. And now the book that took me the longest to read, the book that took up quite a large chunk of my month, was A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Sharon. I mean, understandably, this is a tome. It is quite chunky. It is like 866 pages, so it's like 2 books. So understandably, this took me a large chunk of the month because of the size of it, because of how big it is, it is beautiful. It is beautiful, but I did love this. So it was worth the time that I invested in it. It was definitely worth it. And I think I was slower towards the beginning of the book, the beginning of April, the first half of April. We were still doing Ramadan, so I was slow. I was very headachy. I definitely picked up pace towards the middle of the book. My trip to Italy was on a Thursday. It was on a Thursday. I knew I was going, and I was like, I have to finish the book. I have to finish this book before I go, because otherwise I can't take this book with me. I can't take it with me because it is so chunky, and I was very determined to finish it. So I really picked up pace in the second half, as I was like, must finish book. I really liked this. I really did like this. I liked our cast of characters, that it was a multi-perspective story set in the same world as Priory of the Orange Tree, but 500 years prior. So it's this epic fantasy world, and I think that is one of its biggest strengths, is the world building. The world building and the characters. That it is a very in-depth world, which really works for me and my taste in fantasy. I love an in-depth world. I thrive. Well, I don't know if I thrive, but my reading enjoyment thrives on a in-depth world, because I want the world to seem believable. I want to feel as though I have been put into that world and I can sort of see the history, the culture, and it feels like a real world. And so having such an in-depth world really heightened my enjoyment. And then the characters, there are 4 main perspectives that we are following from different perspectives all over the world. So we have a princess who is coming into her power. We have in the east a woman who has been raised up in the mountains. We have people in the priory, and we have a young male as well. And I really like how there are different views on religion in this world, or different views on the history, different views on what's happened in the past, and I find that so interesting. I love it when a past event has been interpreted by different people in different ways. So some people believe one thing has happened, some people believe another thing has happened, and they're in conflict of each other. I find that so interesting, how a whole sort of religion or a whole culture can be created over an event, and then different parts of the world have interpreted that event differently and have created a whole different culture. I found that this book was very well paced. Yeah, I really enjoyed the whole narrative of it all the way through, that I never got bored. Because of the multiple perspectives, I was constantly intrigued to move from the next one. I think I did have a couple of favourites, but I was always invested in keeping going to the next chapter and getting and continuing on with each point of view. I think the whole book was well paced, was well written. So I would definitely recommend this. I think it makes me sort of want to reread Priory of the Orange Tree, but you know, these are very, very chunky books, because I did love Priory of the Orange Tree too when I read it. Definitely my favourite book of the month. Stands out as a favourite, and probably stands out as the prettiest book as well that I read this month. And this may have been why my more epic fantasy mood sort of dwindled a little bit, that this was quite a chunky epic fantasy to read, and my epic fantasy mood has been a little bit slower. Well, this whole year I've been a bit slow on the epic fantasy. I think all of my epic fantasy mood went into this book, but I would definitely recommend it. And I also really thoroughly enjoyed how female centric it was, that a lot of the perspectives were female, and I also really liked how it explored so many different aspects of the LGBTQIA plus spectrum as well, that there was a lot of representation within this, which I enjoyed exploring. So those are the 5 books that I read and finished in the month of April. I did also start a 6th book, as I mentioned, which is Blood Solace by Bella Roth, the 2nd book in the Blood Grace series. I'm reading this with Becca from Becca and the Books and her book club that she's doing for this series. I really loved Blood Mercy when I read it back in February, so just to continue on with this, I was really excited to get into this, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. I'm like halfway through, which is why I think it would be too ambitious for me to finish it by the end of the month, but I am really enjoying it. I like these characters, I like the world, I like how political and fantasy heavy this fantasy romance is. Very intrigued to see where this is going to go. But yeah, excited to get back into this and continue on reading this one. And I will save the rest of my thoughts for my May wrap up. So there we go. There are the books that I read in the month of April, and what I have now continuing and bringing forward into May. Here comes a helicopter that's just going to disrupt the flow here. Cool. Good. Do let me know your thoughts on any of these books and what you read in April, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!